Welcome in, Slumpbusters. It's time for another recording. Time to break down the NFL offseason. Your host, Juju Talk Sports, joined, of course, by Kyle Ledbetter. Expectations are always high out of Dallas. Last year, the Cowboys won 12 games and coasted to the NFC East title. That is before getting upended by my San Francisco 49ers. Year 3 of the Mike McCarthy era in Dallas is upcoming. According to overthecap.com, Dallas has the 7th most cap space in the NFL. Here to talk the Dallas Cowboys early offseason moves, RJ Ochoa of SB Nation's Blogging the Boys. RJ, how's your day going, man?
It's going well. Thanks for having me. The loss to San Francisco really broke a lot of Cowboys fans. It's felt both like a day and like 6 years have passed since then. So it's great to be reminded of that every single moment that I can be.
Oh, I definitely have to make it known, being here in Central Texas as a Niners fan, it's constantly walking around with the palpable presence of Cowboys fans. So, every now and then just got to slip in that heartbreak. Speaking of heartbreaking situations, though, yesterday, the Cowboys were finalizing a deal with Randy Gregory. Seemed like it was done. And then in the 11th hour, Randy Gregory becomes a Bronco. What broke down in those negotiations? And what's the contingency plan out there in Dallas? Like I mentioned, you guys have a lot of cap space heading into this one.
Well, they have cap space now because they've created it. That the Cowboys started off in the red, like a handful of NFL teams, and they've restructured deals of Dak Prescott's deal, Zach Martin's deal. They struck a new deal with DeMarcus Lawrence to create some salary cap space, and it really seemed like all those things, trading away Amari Cooper, were done in the name of keeping certain players around. Among them, obviously, players like Randy Gregory. And so there's a little bit of a he said, she said game happening, between the Cowboys and Randy Gregory's representation. But it kind of seems like there was some, at the very least, confusion in the 11th hour, as you mentioned. But that the negotiations maybe weren't exactly what either party would have liked throughout the entire process. And so it really just kind of was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Like, you ever just have like a bad day and like the dumbest thing sets you off just because you've kind of been ready to hit that boiling point. Not that this was a dumb thing, but I think that it was that kind of just moment that everybody kind of needed to blow up, and unfortunately everything dissolved. And there was an offer waiting for Randy, as you mentioned, from Denver. He took it, and so sometimes that just happens. But it was a spectacular bit of chaos for the Cowboys, as is usually the case.
So with the Cowboys, the big news that made headlines was, of course, Amari Cooper. He was traded to Cleveland. They didn't get a lot of compensation for him, but Cleveland did take on pretty much all of his contract in the trade. So they kind of valued cap space and money over potential, draft compensation in that case. So what do you make of the move? What does it mean for Dak? What does it mean for CeeDee Lamb? And what does it mean for the 2022 Dallas Cowboys?
You say 2022, it was very clear and obvious 2 years ago that the Cowboys set up a decision for Amari Cooper this offseason in 2022. It was very obvious that his contract did have that escape hatch this offseason, to where the Cowboys would only have to eat $6 million of his $22 million overall salary. And that lined up, you mentioned CeeDee Lamb, but lined up with Michael Gallup's rookie contract expiring. Now, at the time of agreeing to terms with Amari Cooper 2 years ago, CeeDee Lamb was in the NFL draft process. They did not know that they were going to land CeeDee Lamb with the 17th overall pick. And I think that really crystallized that idea of, okay, we're going to make a decision 2 years from now who to pair with CeeDee in the long run. And, a year ago, Michael Gallup was kind of regarded as this trade piece because he was entering the final year of his rookie contract. There were a lot of Cowboys fans, I know we wrote about it, that talked about flipping, at the time, Michael Gallup for Stephon Gilmore. Obviously, this, again, predates Trayvon Diggs' kind of, arrival last year. And then Gilmore, getting traded to Carolina. And so Michael Gallup had a phenomenal 2019 season with the Cowboys and Dak Prescott, and was really off to a great start in 2020. Before Dak Prescott got hurt. Michael Gallup obviously got hurt after the season opener, which really impacted his overall free agency candidacy this year. Then he tore the ACL in the penultimate game of the regular season. And so it's been this strange, like, are they actually going to go through with it sort of situation? But it does kind of seem like Amari had a bit of a falling out with the front office, coaching staff, whoever you want to put, on that label. But to your point, they really just wanted to get rid of his salary. And again, they set this up this way. And so it was somewhat by design. Are they a better team without him? No. But the totality of how smart or stupid it is still does remain to be seen. And some of that involves luck. Are they able to use that salary cap space on now not Randy Gregory, but somebody else? Are they able to fortify their team in different senses? Does a Chris Olave or somebody fall to them with the 24th overall pick to where they still have another threat on the outside opposite of Michael Gallup, because CeeDee Lamb, everybody wants to see him play primarily out of the slot, and that hasn't happened. But there are a lot of questions around it. It does make sense, and it was all put together in a plan, but whether or not CeeDee is capable of taking over that top role remains to be seen. We have also yet to see Dak Prescott, not that he's incapable of it, but have yet to see him be this version of himself without Amari Cooper on the team. So there are some questions, there are some concerns, but I guess it's a little bit of an educated guess on the Cowboys' part.
You mentioned it before that trade, before Amari was traded to Dallas, Dak was a pretty average quarterback, about 90 less passing yards per game. His QBR, his passer rating, about 20 points below his average with Amari. Is it an oversimplification to say Amari in, good Dak, Amari out, bad Dak? What do you think is going to be the true impact of trading out Amari for Michael Gallup essentially being the number one or number two?
I do think it's a little bit of an oversimplification. That 2018 season, which was really, the worst part of Dak Prescott's career so far, the first half of it. It should be mentioned that earlier that offseason in 2018, the Cowboys cut Dez Bryant and Jason Witten retired. So those were two really, the first Jason Witten retirement, to be clear. There was some startling change, and they really thought that they could go at this thing. The term that they used all throughout the offseason was wide receiver by committee. They signed Allen Hurns. They still had Cole Beasley. They had Deontay Thompson as one of their free agent signings. They still had Tavon Austin, who they had traded for the year before. So it was this just kind of collection of wide receiver parts, and nothing was really standing out, and nothing was really taking off or materializing. And so that was a struggle, and that was why the Cowboys ultimately, in an act of desperation, traded for Amari. He really, really saved them. Not that injuries are ever a good thing, but that was the season. The Cowboys, they lost to Washington on October 21st of that year. The very next day, they traded for Amari Cooper. And a few weeks later, Alex Smith at the time was injured. And that was the terrible injury that he suffered. And that really has put Washington in the place that they're at, still looking for a quarterback. But at the time, Washington was leading the division. It really looked like Alex Smith was going to lead them to a division title. And I don't know, the Cowboys lost their first game with Amari. They were 3-5 after a Monday night loss to Tennessee. Actually, Jason Witten called that game on Monday Night Football. And then they ripped off 5 wins in a row. And that really validated who Amari was in the trade, and really catapulted Dak Prescott into this different level of quarterbackdom, because his rookie year was a very different season. The 2017 season for the Cowboys was really kind of plagued by the will Zeke be suspended, won't he be suspended energy that surrounded them every single week. So 2018 was kind of this first opportunity to really see Dak. And so Amari, opened the door for him being an elite quarterback. We certainly saw that really take off. Dak specifically had a lot of progression in 2019. Michael Gallup is a huge part of that. And so I think there's a lot of hope and belief that can happen. But there's no question that Amari's absence will create a lot more pressure and a lot more coverage that other players have to fight through that they haven't had to before. And that's where somebody like CeeDee Lamb has to step up and really kind of be the new answer. But, the hope and belief is that you pay Dak Prescott as much as you do for him to be the answer, for him to be the difference, and not for somebody else like Amari Cooper.
Has there been any updates on the Ezekiel Elliott front? Because I know he had a slight dip in production 2 years ago, little bit bounce back this year. Obviously, he still has the huge contract, and, they've valued Amari Cooper in that situation. So is there anything new there, or is he still central to the long-term plan of the Cowboys?
I mean, I if you ask the Cowboys, they'll die on the Zeke hill. In fact, 2 weeks ago, in the lead up to the NFL Combine, Stephen Jones was asked about Amari Cooper and DeMarcus Lawrence. And obviously, we've seen two different things happen to them so far. Amari's gone, DeMarcus gets a new deal with the team. And the answer to that was, there's a lot of moving parts. We don't know what's going to happen. We're looking at all parts of our roster, et cetera, very company line. But then he's asked about Ezekiel Elliott, and he's a warrior. We love Zeke. He what a guy, plays through injury. His money's guaranteed. We're obviously, we can't touch him. He's going to be around. And I think every Cowboys fan is incredibly grateful to Zeke for what he's done and what he's meant to the Cowboys. It's been a really fun little era. But the evidence is just overwhelming that he's not the player he used to be, that Tony Pollard is a special player, that Zeke is incredibly overpaid, and good for Zeke. I mean, good for Zeke winning those negotiations against the Cowboys. And that's a really frustrating thing. And so the Cowboys tend to kind of tell people it's raining, when they're peeing down their leg when it comes to Zeke. And that really bothers people. But that's the bed they've made. And they want to make it. They want to lie in it. They're very proud to make it and to lie in it. They were very proud of the fact that Zeke played injured basically the entire season. Zeke said as soon as the season ended against the 49ers that he played, through a partially torn PCL It was revealed that that happened way early in the year when they played the Carolina Panthers. And so, there's an argument to be made, a very good argument, that a healthy Zeke is not the best runner on your team. So I don't know why you're prioritizing an injured Zeke Elliott, but the Cowboys remain convinced that that is the best way to win in today's NFL, which is a premise that a lot of data and substance and evidence overwhelmingly disagrees with. And that's just that in a nutshell kind of explains who they are in today's moment.
Well, we're talking about the long-term plan for the Dallas Cowboys. It's important to note that Kellen Moore is still the offensive coordinator of this team. Mike McCarthy seemingly is going to be on the hot seat coming into this year. What, if anything, can Mike McCarthy do to save his job? Is that, simply put, win a Super Bowl title, or is there like a lower bar that he can hit?
To be frank, I feel really terrible for Mike McCarthy, and it's been a really awkward offseason for him, really. I mean, from the very beginning, just about, Jerry Jones does a lot of radio hits throughout the week. He does 2 radio hits every single week during the season. And in his season-ending one on the home of the Cowboys, 105.3 The Fan, he was coy about Mike McCarthy's job status. He was asked, he was given multiple opportunities in that first interview to, confirm that Mike McCarthy was returning for 2022. He didn't. He acted all, pissed off. He huffed and he puffed and he blew down the house of straw and the house of twigs, just like the big bad wolf. And the next week was filled with all the coaching rumors and different coaches getting new jobs and filling different vacancies and things like that. And obviously Dan Quinn was a head coaching candidate, and he did not get the Denver Broncos or the Chicago Bears jobs. Those are the 2 that he was really heavily linked to the most. And in the aftermath of that, it was, as soon as those jobs were filled, as soon as Matt Eberflus, a former Cowboys staffer, got the Bears job, and Nathaniel Hackett got the Broncos job, it was announced that Dan Quinn was returning to the Cowboys to be their defensive coordinator. And Jerry did a surprise call-in, session on the same radio station, which he's known to do, and bragged about keeping Dan Quinn around. And he actually said that it was his strategy to purposefully not confirm that Mike McCarthy was coming back to, I guess, in his mind, for Dan Quinn to entertain the idea of potentially somehow inheriting the Cowboys head coaching job. And so there was a lot of undermining that Jerry Jones did. And that's just what he did. The Cowboys have had a sort of a secret, but not so secret love affair with Sean Payton for a very long time. And so his retirement threw another wrench into this, whole complicated storyline. And that's not Jerry's fault or the Cowboys' fault. But again, they've kind of, had eyes for Sean Payton for a very long time. And then, I'm sure you've discussed Mike McCarthy went on the Rich Eisen show and very, very firmly, had some thoughts on what Jerry had to say on Dan Quinn and everything like that. Yeah, I mentioned the NFL Combine the first day when McCarthy spoke. He did not have any Cowboys gear on, and so people read into that. I thought that was kind of silly. It's just been a very, very, very awkward offseason for him. It really does feel like a lame duck sort of thing. Trading away Amari Cooper doesn't help his cause, obviously. And so it does feel like, hey, you've got to win the Super Bowl or we're going to get rid of you. And I'm not a Mike McCarthy guy. I've gone to bat for him a lot, and I've really, as new information has come out, as last season kind of unplayed itself, I adjusted my stance a little bit personally. But I do feel for him because I don't know who you can expect anybody in this situation to thrive or to flourish. And so it does feel like they're setting him up to be the fall guy, which is really unfortunate.
What do you think is the next move for the Cowboys? Because we mentioned they have the 7th most cap space and not a whole lot of people other than Chandler Jones maybe to throw that money at. And obviously the draft is coming up. They don't have a huge pick in the draft. They could obviously make some sort of trade. So what is the next move for Dallas?
They still have some players that they want to retain. J-Ron Curse was a safety they signed last year, kind of a journeyman at the time, played really well for them. So that's something that they're working on. We'll totally see if that works out. Obviously, they missed out on Randy Gregory. They would like to get a long-term deal done with Dalton Schultz, who they placed the franchise tag on. That would also create some more salary cap space this season if it wound up happening. They've already lost out on Cedric Wilson, who was another potential guy to bring back. But, they're going to, they have needs. Their most glaring needs now are at wide receiver and at guard and maybe tackle if you don't believe in Terrence Steele, who's entering his 3rd season with the team. They need help at linebacker, especially if they're going to move Micah Parsons around. Maybe they bring Leighton Vander Esch back on a 1-year sort of prove-it deal or something like that. And so they generally tend to find their positions of need. They generally tend to sign these lower-level free agents at this point in time, the 2nd, the 3rd wave, so they don't enter the draft with this absolute must-fill hole where if they don't get anybody at that position in the draft, and they're just kind of dead men walking. So I think that's what's next. It's just kind of filling in the holes, so to speak. Like, when you move out of an apartment and you take off all the stuff that's hanging and you go put like the toothpaste in the hole so you get your security deposit back. Like that's kind of what like they're about to do in free agency. And so will they take a big swing at a Chandler Jones? History would say no. They haven't. I think there's this perception nationally that, oh, Jerry will sign anybody. Jerry will do anything. They are incredibly frugal in free agency. They do not like to sign the big name. Their last, quote unquote, big name signing was 10 years ago. It was 2012. They signed Brandon Carr coming off his time with the Kansas City Chiefs. He played, moderately well for them, but he didn't have 1,000 interceptions. And so he was regarded as a failure. Maybe the hottest name right now is Von Miller. NFL Network's Shane Slater reported that he has interest in the Cowboys, but the price has to be right, and the price has to be right for Vaughn too. And generally speaking, the Cowboys don't like the price that players like, and so I don't know. I mean, they have a need there. They're very clearly willing to spend money at edge rusher opposite of DeMarcus Lawrence, as evidenced by the fact that they were going to give it to Randy Gregory. So does it work out with Von Miller or Chandler Jones or Zadarius Smith? I don't know. It would stand to reason that they would walk away with somebody there. Maybe they might just re-sign Dorrance Armstrong, but I think that's one of their more pressing needs right now, along with Jaron Kearse.
All right, RJ Ochoa, SB Nation, Logging the Boys. Thank you for coming on, joining us today, man. Anything else you're working on? Any other projects? Any other plugs?
No, we're just not sleeping much right now. I mean, obviously, free agency is a busy time of year, and again, not that the Cowboys are doing anything notable, but their players are leaving, and so we've got trackers and updates and things we're doing, getting ready for our draft coverage. I think a lot of people also think this time of year slows down. In some ways, this time of year is busier than the season. The season is you can kind of find a rhythm and things get a little bit more regular. But so we're staying on our toes and getting ready for the draft, and then we'll figure out who the Cowboys like, who they picked, and how they're going to help this team. And the cycle moves on and on like it always has.
For all Dallas Cowboy coverage, go check out RJ Ochoa. Juju Talk Sports here. Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you on the next one.